a sugya of bitul. In other words, we learned in the past what's mutar, what's asur, which kind of bugs are mutar, which kind of bugs are asur. We learned in the past about the need to have a filter in the water. Do we need? Is it asur? But what happens if you take something that's already infested or possibly not infested, but it's under the category of miuta matsui, as we'll explain now again as a review, and you cook it. It's cooked already. What are you supposed to do now? Are you able to eat it? You're not allowed to eat it. All these are sugyot we need to learn. So first of all, the basics that we learned before, but just to review quickly. We said there are three levels. They're what we call muhzak, and second level is miuta matsui, and the third level is miuta matsui. Muhzak means any food item, fruits, vegetables, fish, whatever it is, that's likely to have the bugs in a majority or at least half the times. So when you have produce that's mostly infested, like for example, strawberries, like for examples, blackberries, like for examples, raspberries, corn on the cob, and so on. Those are majority of the times, well, could be corn on the cob, is not majority. Lettuce, all other green things like celery, what do you call it, parsley, dill, all these things, broccoli for sure, cauliflower, those things that are considered muhzak betolaim, which means majority of the times they'll be infested. That is one category. That's asur to eat that mideoraita, because the Torah said you're not allowed to eat bugs. That's included in.
Even if there wouldn't be any bugs in that section, or the cost is going to be.
If you checked it, that's fine. But can you take a strawberry that's majority of the times is infested,
But is there an issue
and say bracha and eat it?
Even the person would get lucky and there's no bugs in that section. It is still
So that's a question of חשב לעשות איסור, ועלה בידו בשר טלה. זה גמרא in the end of קידושין, שצריך לעשות, סליחה, עדיין, the Gemara says, צריך סליחה וכפרה. We learn it from the pasuk of the נדרים. So over here, you have the first level of Isur. Second level is miuta matsui. Miuta matsui is less than half, but still there's a nice amount of times that you'll have over there infestation. And because of that, Chachamim, that's already not Doraita, because it's a majority, Chachamim restricted you from eating it unless you clean it completely. Partially clean is not good enough. You have to completely clean it. The Shulchan Aruch says it has to be completely clean. Once there is a chiyuv to clean, it has to be now 100% clean, not partially. What is miuta matsui? We mentioned few of the shitot. The most known shita of the Mishkanot Yaakov is it's close to half. What's close to half? Whether it's 49, 30%, it's not clear how much is close to half. I'm sorry, that's the Riva, not Mishkanot Yaakov. Mishkanot Yaakov says 10%. The Riva says close to half, and Chacham Ovadia is posek like that. We mentioned that Rav Shlomo Zalman also says that it's correct to pasken like the Mishkanot Yaakov, which is 10%. So Rav Revach in Tolat Shani says that you see from the Lashon, correct, that even close to half, like the Riva, would be the halacha. That is meikar adin. Just it's correct to be machmir and go with the 10%. 10% that he learns, the Mishkanot Yaakov, is from a Gemara in Baba Batra, that when you have barrels with a likelihood, that's the Gemara speaks about, you take out 10% because 10% gets spoiled from the barrels of wine, and you can't take out truma on top of such things that were spoiled. So you see that miuta matsui that you have to be choshesh is the 10%. That is the amount that you'll be required to check. There are those that learn that it's much less than that, 3%, 2%, 1%. There's machloket what Rav Elyashiv held, something around those numbers. Each sefer says something else. Others say also around those numbers. Shevet HaLevi has a different understanding in the whole thing. He doesn't put it into percentage. He says an interesting idea. He says that whenever you eat something and you have no, your feeling is that there's no chance that this will be infested, that's considered miut. That's considered miut she'eno matzui. You don't need. It's not. It doesn't even go into the category of miut matzui, which means if let's say you take an apple and you take a bite in an apple, and sure enough you see inside a worm. Wow, you'll be so surprised. You'll show it to your wife. You show it to your kids. Look, there's a worm in an apple. So that shows that it's something that's so unlikely, it's so out of the blue that you don't have to. That's considered miut she'eno matzui. Miut matzui is something that if you eat and you see a worm, you say, you open a cashew and you see a worm over there, you're not going to start calling your friends, taking pictures and showing it around and call, because in cashews you have it's considered miut matzui. You have likelihood to have in there bugs. Okay, so those are the categories and those are the shiurim. When you have something that's miut she'eino matzui, as I just spoke, let's say an apple, or an orange, a clementine, a banana, so it's very unlikely to be infested. But the Chokhmat Adam brings down that before you eat something, you should look at anything you eat. What does that mean, you should look at anything you eat? You take it, you don't have to search for a bug in there, like you do for miut she'eino matzui, which means miut she'eino matzui you have to clean. So let's say it's a corn. In a corn, there's miut matzui, there's likelihood, some kind of likelihood that there is worms inside. So you have to clean it. You have to peel out all the kernels and you have to wash them, and you can just bite into the corn on the cob. But when you eat an apple, you eat an almond, you don't have to start opening it up. Cashew, you have to open it up in order to see what's inside, because there's miut matzui. When you have an almond, you don't have to open it up and check what's inside, because it's miut she'eno matzui. But you have to, but it's correct. You don't have to. It's correct to look at it. Look at it to the right, to the left. Looks fine. There's no hole in it. There's no tunnels in it. There's no black rotten part in it. Good. Eat it. That's the Chokhmat Adam. That's the correct thing to do. You're not required. It's the correct thing to do. So when we're dealing with those levels, we need to know that whenever something gets what we call, it's mitarev, it's mixed up. Mitarev is a term in many places in the halacha. There's a whole ilchot ta'arovot in the Horaa from Siman Tzadik Chet, and we have the dinim of ta'arovet in many other places. Like for instance, borer is only in a ta'arovet. So if you don't have a ta'arovet, what kind of ta'arovet? There's different types of ta'arovot, but you have to have a ta'arovet in order for it to come to the question of borer. When we're dealing with bugs also, when they are in a ta'arovet, which means they are inside something and it's hard to see, which means it's mixed up. For example, you have a bug inside the walking around the strawberry, as we spoke before. So on Shabbat, for instance, taking it out, removing it, it's probably, taking it out from inside, probably is under the Isur of Borer. But what about on the Isur of bugs? Can you eat that strawberry with that thing? Maybe it's considered batel because there's a dinim of bitul. It's nullified. It's not considered like it's not existing once it's with the strawberry. It's so small, it's hard to see. What's the halacha in such a thing? So over here, we have a din that's a famous taz. We mentioned that in the previous shiur, I think. The taz is in Siman Kuf Daled. Over there, the Rama says a chidush nifla. And Darkei Moshe explains, and he brings Rashi. Whenever you have isurim from the Shmona Shratzim, so the isur of those isurim are not a mashu, Rather, the shiur is ke'adasha. So that's the shiur. If you have ke'adasha, that is what you're not allowed to eat. And therefore, when you have something, that some kind of bug from the Shmona Shotzim that got mixed in the food, we are choshesh for that you might take that amount and consume that amount, that should be isur. And he goes through the Taz goes through this Rashi, and he ends up and says the following thing, which the poskim bring down la'alacha, and I like to read it for you inside because this is very important for us to understand. He says like this, לפי הנראה בוודאי לא בעתו כלל לעשות חומרה בשרץ, מה שאין כן בשאר איסור. זה לא עלתה על דעתו כלל. This חילוק that we said before doesn't exist. זה לא כתב דיני סימן זה, אלא להורות שיש שבח בעכבר בשחר וחומץ, ומה שכתב כאן בנחתך שהכל אסור, לא מטעם חשיבות דברייה, אלא דילמה בלה לחתיקת דקה של שרץ בתוך השחר או החומץ, ולזה גם נתכוון הבית יוסף, במה שכתב דחצי שיעור אסור מן התורה, which means the איסור of a bug that's mixed in with something else is as long as it's nikar. You can feel it over there, you can see it over there, it comes out, it's not something that's unrecognizable, you can recognize it in there. That is the isur, which means when you have, let's say again to the story of the strawberry, or let's say a cauliflower, or let's say a broccoli, you have over there a bug, even a very, very small one, since it's possible to see it, it's visible to the eye, or some say you can feel it. That's machloket, the way the Taz learns and the way the Gra learns. Let's see the way he brings it down over here. Also the Brit Chadash, we'll see all that. But what he says over here is the following. First is mechalek and at the most understood way, and that is when you have something lach beyavesh. You have two things that got mixed in. Something that is yavesh, solid, that got mixed in with liquid. So for sure it's floating in there, like the story we said with the copepods in the water. So copepods are the variant that's considered solid, and the water is liquid. You can clearly see it once you have the right shade behind it. You put something black behind it, so because the color of the copepods becomes see-through in a way, it becomes white. So it's hard to see, but when you put a black shade behind it, you'll be able to detect it right away. So first he makes that chiluk between the two, and then he goes to explain even more. אין כאן חילוק בעולם בין שרץ לשאר איסורים, דין הנזכר כאן הוא הווה בכל האיסורים. This din is, by the way, he says by everything. It's not specifically by shratzim. Anything that gets mixed in, you don't say bitul if you can see it, you can recognize it in any possible way. בכל איסורים נתערב והוא ניכר ואי אפשר לבררו, even though אי אפשר לבררו, even though you wouldn't be able to take it out, for some reason, it's recognized inside, it's not בטל. כן נראה לעניות דעתי ברור. And he goes and says the following, אבל כל שניכר קצת מהקום, if you have, let's say, קום that's אסור, ודאי זורקו ואין אוכלו, אלא בכלל החמה, על כן מותר. אבל אין שייך, בזה האיסור נהפך להיתר, משום הכי אסור בעכבר, דשם יאכל האיסור בפני עצמו. He says that even if something becomes very, very small, he goes through the whole Taz over here to explain, even if you have something that, and that is the case of the Gemara, something that broke down, you have, let's say, a achbar, a mice, that broke down and became very, very small pieces, but as long as those pieces you can detect it by either seeing it, the way the Taz wants to say it is see it, the way the Pri Chadash that brings the Taz la'alacha and explains it in length, and the way the Gra learns is that you could even feel it. In other words, even if you can see it in your eyes, we can feel it, it would be asur. Let's see the words of the Pri Chadash, which is very important. And so again, this is all in Siman Kuf Daled, and he says the following. מה שאין כן החתיכה עצמה של איסור, לפי שיש הפרש והיכר בין האיסור וההיתר, ואיך יבטלנו? Once there is a הפרש, once you can see it, you can see the difference, it is something that doesn't become בטל. נמצאנו למדים שאין היבש מתבטל בלח, מפני שהלח לא מחלף ביבש. Again, the same, the most understood difference is between something solid and liquid. ולפיכך, עכבר שנפל לחומץ, if a mice falls into vinegar, ונחתך לחתיכות דקות, and broke down, disintegrated into small pieces. אין לו ביטול אפילו באלף. Why? Those pieces are still there, it's recognizable. שהרי החתיכה ניכרת בתוך החומץ, דאבלח ביבש, ואין לו תקנה אלא בסינון. The only way you'll be able to save the vinegar is if you sift it. אבל אם נתערב השחר במאכל אב, but if it got mixed in, that, let's say vinegar, got mixed in with a thick food, כגון עדשים, גריסים, נימוכים, וכיוצא דעבירות תבווה, אם העכבר נימוח או נחתך כמו המאכל, ממה נפשך שערי, כדין לח בלח או יבש ביבש. The mivteli adadi. If it got mixed in with food, so it becomes batel. Why? Can't find it. אבל אם המאכל נימוח ונעשה רוטב עבה, והעכבר נחתך לחתיכות דקות ונתערבו החתיכות דקות במאכל, אין שם ביטול אפילו באלף, שהרי התבשיל הנימוח עבה לך. If it's there, but it's a little bit liquidy and you can see the difference, החתיכות קטנות של העכבר עב יבש, so that's not batel, says the Pri Chadash, and again that's the lashon of the Taz. It's not batel at all. So let's summarize what we learned over here halacha, what the poskim actually bring down, not like all the other rishonim that brought Rashi, the Tur, the other rishonim as well, that understood that it's much larger shiur. The way they bring down is that whenever you have a isur of, let's say, shratzim that we talk about, and it's something that it fell into the food, let's say it fell in the cholent. So you have over here now in the cholent pieces of ant that fell in there. Would it be batel? The answer is no. Why? Because if you take out the leg of the ant, you'll see that it's an ant. You see that it's a leg of an ant. That's the Taz. That's the way the Taz explains over here. Therefore, that becomes asur. You can't eat that food because you have to find this leg. Although you have to work extremely hard. It's nearly impossible. You have to work extremely hard to find that leg in the cholent. But since it's recognizable, it's possible to find it, it would be asur. And you're not allowed to eat that cholent. Now, let me just take you to a very important halacha in Siman Kuftet. In Siman Kuftet we say yavesh beyavesh. In the Dinei Ta'arovot, you have yavesh beyavesh. You have two things that are solids. Shenitbatel chad betrei. One got batel, got mixed in with two, which means the isur got mixed in with two heterim. Im bishlam kulam keechad, afilu lechol kol echad b'fnei atzmo asur, but the pieces themselves would be mutar. The liquid would be asur, the pieces themselves would be mutar. That's what it says here. Chad betrei batil umutar leochlan. That's the Seif Aleph. Then he's talking about the rotev. The rotev would be asur because the rotev gets the taste of the isur, but the salad with salad would be batel chad betrei. Now, how is it that you have a isur that falls into two heterim, and it's batel? We just said that you have to remove it. It's not batel even if you fell to a whole cholent, and it's a very small, very, very small piece, as long as you can see it or you could feel it. Again, it's a machloket, whether you could see it or you could feel it. The Taz seems to say, see it. The Gra and the Pri Chadash say you could feel it, if you can feel it with your hands. So that becomes asur. So how is it that when you have two large pieces of heter with one large piece of its isur, it will be batel? Remove the isur. What's the answer to that? The answer is that we're talking about a isur she'eino nikar. What does it mean she'eino nikar? So over here, the Shach brings an example. כגון שנפרח לחתיכות דקות, שניכר בין זה לזה. If it's such small pieces that you wouldn't know the difference between them, that is what we're saying that it's asur. So concerning back to us, when you have pieces of legs of the ant, and it fell in the cholent, if you wouldn't see the difference once let's say it's in front of you, somebody would be able to take it out, but you can't tell the difference between this and other things that are there, because it's all mixed with all kind of things in there. Many times you look at things and you don't see the difference. They look exactly the same. The only way you'll be able to know the difference is maybe if you put it under a microscope, you'll see that there's different cells to it. But otherwise, it looks to you exactly the same. It's so small, and it got cooked already, and whatever it is, it's very, very hard to tell the difference. Such a thing will be considered batel. So again, here's an example that he says, כגון שנפרח לחתיכות דקות שאין עיקר בין זה לזה. This is how the Shach brings down from the tool. ונראה לי, says the Shach, דמשכחת להקנמי כגון שיש כאן שניים או שלושה מינים, ונודע שאחד מהם אסור, ואינו ידוע איזה מהם. What's the example? You have three things, and one of them is asur, and you don't know which one it is. What's the example? כגון ששחט כמה מינים, וידוע שאחד מהם נשחט שלא כהוגן, ואין ידוע איזה הוא. You have three chickens. One of them was not shechted correctly, but you can't tell, because only at the time the shochet was able to tell. Once, right? He did over here a shchita, not kahalacha. He did drisa. He did whatever he did that made the chicken taref, not kasher. Actually, it's considered nevela, not refut, because when there's a problem with the shchita, it's nevela. So he did chalada, but afterwards it looks exactly the same. He took out the head, everything looks the same afterwards. You can't tell the difference. It got mixed in, you know that this asur. If all of a sudden it got mixed in with another two. So then we're saying that chad betrei batel, the all mutar. Another example that they bring over here is that you have a piece of matzah, two pieces of matzah kshera that got mixed with bread. The whole three are mutar on Pesach. Huh? How is it mutar on Pesach? The answer is that they look exactly the same. Because back then they used to eat matzah that looked like bread. The halacha, the Gemara brings down that the size of it would be the size of lechem apanim, it would be the hand, the size of tefach, up to a tefach, right? So that is the way. That is the lachma anya she'achlu avotenu. That's not what we eat today. Yeah, that is the lachma anya.
Not even the soft matzot of today.
Yeah, not even the soft matzot of today. So we're saying tefach.
Add the tefach, yeah.
Right. If anybody wants to see about that, it's beautiful. Rav Yitzchak Otzabi, Shlita, there's a choveret that from his shiur, he proves from all kind of places, Gemarot and things, that this is the correct way. Today, there are many poskim that are machmir, chas v'shalom, but we mentioned that Rav Nisim Kareli, it's brought in Chuchani from the Chazon Ish, that it's not chametz, chas v'shalom. It's not their minhag to eat such a matzah, but it's not chametz. Others are choshesh for real chametz in it, because maybe it wasn't baked. You know, today you want to bake it right away. The 18 minutes, nobody keeps the matzah in the oven for 18 minutes. The whole process of the matzah is a couple of minutes. But from the time you start, in the oven it stays 10 seconds. That's it. You put it in, 10 seconds, you take it out. It's not 18 minutes matzah, it's 4 minutes matzah, 3 minutes matzah. That's what it is. So when you have something thick inside, they look at it as mamash something problematic, but whatever it is, that's what it is. So over here, that's the understanding. You have over here three things that look to you exactly the same, but one is chametz. What are you going to do? Today it's also common. You know where? You have matzah that on the box it says chametz lo lepesach, right? But it looks to you just like a regular matzah.
Some matzah they even say lepesach.
Okay, so coming back to us, that is the din by us. When we're dealing with this taz in Kuf Daled, that whenever you have a bug that fell in something got mixed in, such a thing would be permitted only in case that you can't see it, you can't tell. That is the lashon that he brings here. Especially the Pri Chadash, it's very clear the way he says it. Again, לפיכך עכבר שנפל לחומץ ונחתך לחתיכות דקות. Small pieces, but they're recognizable. אין לו ביטול אפילו באלף, שהרי החתיכה ניכרת בתוך החומץ. והאבלח דהווה לך ביבש, ואין לו תקנה אלא בסינון. אבל אם נתערב השחר במאכל אב, כגון עדשים וגריסים נימוכים וכיוצא, דעבירות תבווה, אם העכבר נימוח או נחתך כמו המאכל, so it's מותר. Why? He explains that it's not possible, you can't feel it. שהרי על ידי מישוש, on the contrary, I told you מישוש בידיים that the פרי חדש brings in, it says here, whenever the opposite, על ידי מישוש בידיים בתבשיל ירגיש בממשו של איסור ויקירנה, אבל לאיסור הניכר שאין לו ביטול. But if מישוש הידיים ועיניים, you can tell that is the bug, that is the leg of the bug. That's not possible. You can tell. Such a thing would be mutar. The Chokhmat Adam brings this halacha of the Pri Chadash. He quotes the Pri Chadash. He explains that also what the Pri Chadash says, that if it's biriyah, which means it's a whole thing, so even if it's just so small, you have, let's say, a mite. Mite is so small; it's point to you can't see it you can't see it even on the strawberry. You can't see it on. It's very, very hard to see. Very, very hard to see. So now it fell into your chulent, right? You don't have to be choshesh. Don't get me wrong. Person that has chulent doesn't have to start thinking maybe or soup, maybe something fell in there. Suki isur lo machzikinan. The Minat Adam brings this down that we're not choshesh at all. The halacha brings many times that chzuki isur lo machzikinan. The Binat Adam, in the Chokhmat Adam, this is Sefer Binat Adam, in Shaar Chazakot over there, V'arov, he brings down, Seif Katan, I think, Tet or Yud, that you don't have to be choshesh whenever there's no reason to be choshesh. You have to have a reason. But let's say you saw the bug falling in there, you saw the mite. You saw a mite, you held it in your hand, you wanted to show your kids, I got a mite, look at this, I found a mite in the strawberry. And sure enough, boop, you pass by the chulent, then it falls in there.
What if the strawberry falls into the cholent bags?
Ah,
They have to be
so
aware
this-
of that,
So those are questions already. How far do you have to take? We have those dinim. Do you have to be choshesh that the bug went from one thing to another thing? Those are the halachot in here in Pei Dalet. Right. When we do, that's also another question. In other words, not every strawberry. When we're saying that strawberry is muchzak b'tolaim, it doesn't mean what. How do you view that? Rav Shlomo Zalman wants to know. How do you view how do you view muchzak? How do you view miut hamatzui? How do you view those things? Do you view each strawberry by itself, or do you view it by a box, or do you view it by the container? How do you view such a thing? When you buy, let's say, beans, you're saying the beans are infested. You have to soak them in water, let all the bugs come out. What does it mean infested? If you take a bean, you take a look at it, it's completely clean. You take the second one, the 60th one, the 61st one, the 62nd. Just what in a bag, you'll have a couple of, in the bag you have 500 beans, a mixture of all kind of lentils and beans. So you have over there one bug. So that's considered mi'ut, that's considered muchzak, that's considered nothing. What is this? Right? So over here, when we're dealing with the strawberry, we're saying, strawberry, the box has a lot of, from my experience, sometimes you have 10 and sometimes you have 1. Sometimes you don't have any. But majority of times, you'll find in a box, bugs, right? So you have over there thrips, majority, and some mites. That's normally what you'll find. When you check, let's say, corn on a cob. So out of, let's say, a package of 3, you'll find 1. Not every corn on a cob is infested, but the package of 3, usually they sell them by packages, either by 3 or they let you choose. So you buy 5 for $1 or whatever it is. Today you don't have anything for 5 for $1. That's on the old times, right? So it's 5 for $2. Soon it'll be 5 for $25. It depends how long you stick. But they sell it by 5. They don't tell you just take 1. So do you look at the whole 5? Okay, so that's the question you're dealing with. But we see over here that mite fell into your chulent. And now go find it. Can't find it. It's impossible to find it. That much is not possible to find it. That even if you look for it, they'll tell you try to look for it, you find it, you get $10,000. So you're willing to spend now 5 weeks to find that mite. You're not going to find it. You separate every particle in this cholent, you're not going to find it. Even for that amount of money, you make it your life goal. Not going to find it.
Some of the raisin challah. The big challah with the raisins.
So that could be different because you're saying it's in a raisin. So you have to check the raisins. You take out the raisin. You check. It depends how you check raisins. That's another question. But you see,
Let's say milk falls into chunks. Like a little milk, and you can see like where it's white.
of course you have to take it
But
out.
now, are you allowed to mix it so now it's not nikah?
So we have a dinim of mevatel isur lechatchila. Definitely not. You have to take it, and now you measure 60 times that drop, and definitely you can't mix it up. Although one can argue, because let's say if you have, let's say it's a cholent with chicken. So now milk and chicken is the Rabbanan. According to Shulchan Aruch, once it fell, you could be mosif to be mevatel doing such a thing. Lemaise, and the Horaa is machmir. Beisur de Rabbanan, can you be mevatel once it fell already? Lemaise, even the Sfaradim, the minhag is to be machmir and not be mevatel, even the Rabbanan. That's the way it is. Okay, but that's a different question that you'll find in the beginning of Ilchot Ta'arovot in Isur mevatel lechatchila in Tzadik Tet.
So the issue is very issue is chaticha.
What we spoke up to now was chaticha, not burial. We're talking about a leg of the thing. But you're right over here. When I spoke about mites, you can't find it. But if it's a birya of a mite, which means it's a whole thing, then the cholent is aser. You can't find it, it's aser. That's what the Chokhmat Adam brings down. Halacha lemaaseh.
You could use the Ezra of the Rashba to cook it, then it becomes nimuach, no?
So we'll see. See, the Rashba, that's what I want to speak if we'll have time. The Rashba would not help you over here because the Rashba has a sfek. One sfek is maybe it's there, maybe it's not. And over here, we know for sure that it's there. Right? So you don't have that. Okay. So now, I want to take you to a very important thing, and that is what you spoke to mix up something that is cooked, maybe grind it up. Many people want to know, can you grind up? You bought strawberries. Now what? You're not cleaning it. You bought blackberries. Can you clean blackberries? Some say you clean blackberries. How? You can't, so we'll see. That's what I want to speak about. But some want to say, how do you clean blackberries? If there's bugs in there, you can't. If you try to wash it, it dissolves. It doesn't stay. It's very soft. Strawberries also. So what do you do?
Cut the crown, the top.
No, but the inside. The crown is one thing. The inside. There's a nice amount inside. It's not like a strawberry that's a thick, solid thing that you can. Strawberry will show you how to clean. You take a brush. First, you soak it in water with soap for 3-4 minutes. Take it out, and then with a brush under the faucet, the stream of the water, you brush it from all the sides, and they come out. This is something that usually works. You don't have to worry more than that. Ravaya was machmir not to do that, but lemaise, this is something that's proven to work. Over here, when you want to take that, you bought raspberries and blackberries. You didn't know. You come home, your wife tells you, we don't buy this, it's infested. So you tell, okay, so I have a good idea, we'll blend it. Blend it, and you'll be permitted. So let's see if that works. Comes the poskim and say over here a list of conditions in order for you to be able to do that. First of all, just before even the conditions, those conditions is by blending it, what you're doing is you're breaking it up and you're making it now something that's already doesn't look like a bug in any way, the way we explained, because you grind it, it becomes something that's not, a powder, you can't see it. But that doesn't work always with any blender because some of those bugs have a very strong body, like the thrips, for instance, have a very strong body. Just a regular blender would push them around, but it would not cut through them. You have to have like a turbo blender, something that's very, very strong.
Why is that
Ninja,
not
ninja, ninja. You have to have like a Putin blender, not something that works. So,
It's not working.
not working so well. So you see, it doesn't work on bugs. I told you.
You cannot find bugs in the train.
So it says here in the Ben Ish Chai, some of the conditions. Let's go through them. Ben Ish Chai is in Parashat Neso, Shana Shniya, Halacha Ot Tet Zayin, Chitim Betulaim. We'll see with the time that we'll have. We don't have much time. Where did the Ben Ish Chai draw all these halachos from? But he has over here 4 conditions. Let's see what they are. Chitim Betulaim. You have wheat which is infested. Im ruban metulaim, אי אפשר לבררן עם קרן מגוי. Majority, if you see that majority is infested, you can't clean it. And that's a rule. He says sell it to a goy. That's a rule you need to know, that sometimes you check and you see that there's so many bugs, you have to give up. In other words, if you clean it one time, you take out, you see some bugs. So you have to clean it again, second time, until they come out clean. Just think, clean a second time and still see a nice amount of bugs. It's not like one bug here, one bug there. At a certain point, you have to say, this is too infested. Even if I'll get cleaning, if I'll get some clean checking, for sure I missed something here. They're very likely that I missed something, just didn't come up.
But can I get the miush animal with 10 can I get to that point where it's miush animal?
Also, because we're saying that when even a miut matzui, if you have a miut matzui, the halacha in Shulchan Aruch is that you have to clean it that it's still 100% clean. You can't take it down to miut matzui. But we'll see over here that there are some ways to be lenient, and we'll see when. So over here it says, Im ruban metulaim, you can't use it, get rid of it, or sell it to a goy. Im en ruban metulaim, if it's miut hamatzui, it's minority. So what you need to do is ivrerem tchila v'achar kach mutar letachanan. You have to first clean them up. Ivrerem tchila, you have to clean it up. So now, cleaning up, according to halacha, as we explained before, has to be 100%. If you have something that's miut hamatzui, minority of times you have bugs there, you have to make sure that it's 100% clean. But you have a suggestion with all the conditions that we'll say in the Ben Ish Chai, to what? To grind it up. What are the conditions? Okay, he brings over here something that the Gemara brings down. We'll skip that because it's not nogia so much to us. He says that after you cut it and you grind it to the point that it's not visible anymore and it's not even birya, it's batli, you need the following conditions. So again, the first one was to clean it. Second was that it's a minority, not majority. Third, הוא כוונתו לטחון ולא בא לבטל האיסור בידיים. We said before that it's אסור to be מבטל איסור. You're not allowed to mix איסור in a heter in order to be able to eat it. That's called מבטל איסור לכתחילה. It's אסור. The Shach brings down in צדיק ט' מחלוקת ראשונים, whether the איסור is איסור דאורייתא or דרבנן, but regardless it's אסור to do such a thing. And therefore, מהטעם אשר אינן למכור לגוי ולא חשינן שם היופה וימכור לישראל, if it's such. משום שאחר תחינה נתרסק התולה ובטל. וחיטים אלו דלא התליעו רובן שאמרנו שצריך לבררם תחילה. Those that we spoke now, that we said that if it's minority and you don't have to, and you have to clean it up, היינו לכתחילה. אבל בדיעבד, אם לא בררם ותחנם, מותר. If you didn't grind them up, if you didn't clean them and you grind them up already, you made a mistake. You didn't know. In other words, if somebody asks, can I take those strawberry and make a smoothie out of it? All these blackberries and raspberries, and can I make a smoothie out of it? Put in there some green things that it's very healthy. Instead of checking, many times you go to, people go to all kind of stores, and they tell them, put this, put that. You check it before, it's grinded up, it's good. So, לכתחילה you're not allowed, you have to do all these things. But, if you didn't do, אם לא בררם ותחנם, מותר. ובנחי ואחי צריך לחקד הקמח אחר התחינה. והדשרינן על ידי תחינה, this that it's permitted, another condition, דווקא בחיטים שדרכם להיתכן. We're talking about only things like the wheat, which is something you grind normally. That is what it's meant for, to grind. You don't normally eat the wheat, you make out of it flour. אבל קמח שהתליע אסור לתוכנו כדי שיתרסקו התולעים, דאין מבטלים איסור לכתחילה. קמח, once the flour becomes infested, so you can't grind it out again, because that's not normally what you do with flour. So therefore so we have over here a bunch of leniencies. Let's see what they are. It needs to be, first of all, in order to be matir, to allow to grind it up, you need to have, says the Ben Ish Chai, a miut. It needs to be minority. And that's by the way, it's a shach. This he brought down from a shach in Siman Pei Dalet that we're learning right now. The shach in Lamed Tet, in Pei Dalet, Siman Seif Yud Dalet, the shach in Lamed Tet, he brings down over here the din that is brought down from the Tumat Adeshen. Right away in the beginning in the Shulchan Aruch Yud Daled, חיטים מתולעים מותר לתוכנן, והוא שירקד הקמח לאור היום. You're allowed to grind them after you clean them well. ירקד הקמח לאור היום. Says the Shach, there's a bunch of poskim. This is the Agaot Sharedura. It's a Tumat Adeshen. I'm sorry, the Tumat Adeshen brings this down. And then the Shach brings a list of poskim that disagree. They argue on that. So he says that it's impossible to, first of all, it's hard to say that the Tumat Adeshen argues on all these poskim. Secondly, if he does argue, why the Shulchan Aruch paskin like a dat yachid against everybody else? So he says, נראה לחלק דאינך poskim in the middle of the Shach. נראה לחלק דאינך poskim מייריק שהם מתולעים ברוב, בעניין שאי אפשר לבררן. We're dealing, those that were מחמיר, it's when it's majority times infested. שאז ודאי לא סמכין על נאינך צדדים, שמצא מערי להתיר. מערי זה תרומת הדשן. וגם מערי לא התיר אלא בעניין שבררו קודם התחינה. But with minority, in other words, minority, and you have to clean it up. That's what comes out. So here we have such a shach. Taz doesn't seem to say like that. The shach says, a different reason. He says, mutar letachnan, shatolaim borchim b'shat china. They ran away, so you don't have to worry. But this is how the shach brings down. Normally you posek like the shach. I'm not even sure that the Taz argues, but you see that din. So this is the first of all that it needs to be mute. Secondly, it says over here that the Ben Ish Chai brought that you first have, even though it's minority, so you have over here, let's say, those things that you ask. Can I just grind up the raspberries? Raspberries are considered muchzak betolaim, the majority times. So then you can do that. That suggestion will now work for that. Secondly, you have to first clean it as much as possible. So you don't have to have 100% cleaning when you're planning to grind it up, unlike when you eat it the way it is. But you have to clean it up. That's what the Ben Ish Chai brings down. And this is something that's brought openly in many places. First of all, in Shulchan Aruch, the Chochmat Adam, in Lamed Chet, yes, Klalim, Klal Lamed Chet. He brings that in Kaf Daled. The Shach in over here in Lamed Chet. Take a look on the Shulchan Aruch. The Shulchan Aruch brings such a thing. He says, Dvash shenaflu bo in Yud Gimel. Dvash shenaflu bo nemalim. You have honey that ends fell in there, and you can't remove them. So it's because the honey becomes thick. It becomes very thick, like a stone at times. What do you do? So the Shulchan Aruch says what you need to do is heat it up. Once you warm it up, so it becomes more liquidy, and now you could sift it. You could take it out. You could take them out. You can sift them out. So it says here, דבש שנפלו בו נמלים, יחממנו עד שאין ניתח ויסננו. says the shach here, ויסננו, ואין זה משום מבטל איסור לכתחילה, דאסור, שאין כוונתנו אלא לתקן הדבש. So you see over here, the third thing that we said, that the Ben Ish Chai said, that you shouldn't have the kavanah. Also, this is how the Taz brings down, the Tosfot brings down. It's a known thing that's brought down, but seems like this is one of the main sources for such a thing, that whenever you do something, although over here you mevatel, what do you mevatel? You're going to take out the legs because you have to clean. We said that in Shulchan Aruch it seems like you have to clean out the thing. You can rely on it. It's not batel when you can take it out. but the tam, the taste of the legs, when you cook it, it goes into the honey. How could you have that? It's mevatel isur lechatchila. Mevatel isur lechatchila is only when you have intention to be mevatel isur lechatchila. And not only that, and over here you don't. You just want to, your intention over here, the Taz says in Ilchot Ta'uvot, that your intention is to actually remove the ends. Opposite intention. Kavanah afucha. But even without that, the Shach and others learn that you don't need the opposite intention. As long as your intention is not to have the ants in there, you don't, in other words, sometimes you mevatel this because you want it in there. Let's be mevatel, and it's going to be in there. I'm happy with it. Sometimes my intention is totally different. I don't have any intentions for that. So therefore over here, when I grind up such a thing, my intention is not to eat those bugs. That's not what I want. I want to permit the raspberries. Oh, so I want to permit the raspberries, not a problem of mevatel isur lechatchila. It's not mevatel isur lechatchila. And also, it's the Ben Shai said it only works on something that's darko litchon. That's the normal way. Raspberries, that's not the normal way. Normally people eat raspberries. You buy from the supermarket raspberries. It's an expensive item. It's not cheap. You're paying for $1. I see it's very expensive. Blackberries, very expensive. Those things are expensive. Then you don't put them normally in the blender to make your smoothie. That's not normally the way it is. Unless, again, you are, it's davar shedarko, and that's the way it is, and that's what you normally do with it, that's fine. But otherwise, you can't do that. Where is that brought down? That's brought down, I saw it in the Darkei Tshuva. Darkei Tshuva in Kuf Samech Vav. Over here, Pei Dalet Kuf Samech Vav. The Darkei Tshuva brought it down, that idea. You have other tnaim that the Ben Shai didn't bring. Like, for instance, the Pri Toar says that you have to chop it up the very, very small pieces. But that already we saw in the Taz. It needs to be such that it's not visible in any possible way. So we see over here the tnaim, the conditions, in order to be able to put something in a smoothie. It's not in the blender. It's not so simple at all, because you have to have all these conditions you in order to grind it up. Normally, it has to be something that you can't. It's very hard to find. So hard to find. You have to do the tricks necessary in order to remove it. Where do we know that? That we see from the Rema. There's a Rema in Tzadik Chet, where he speaks about chelev, for instance, that fell in your food, and it's batel, but you could freeze the food, and the fat would rise, and you remove it, right? Such a thing. The Rema brings this down, la halacha, that you have to do. In Tzadik Chet, Sif Gimel, is machloket, whether that's a Torah obligation or mina Torah it's batel, and it's only mida Rabbanan. So the Pri Megadim says that mina Torah, you have to go and do all necessary in order to remove it, which means this Rema is a Torah obligation. So over here also, you have in the raspberry such a thing, you'll have to do everything possible in order to remove it, even if it takes work. If let's say, again, I told you, how do you check those that say you could check raspberries? How do you check them? Or the blackberries, how do you check them? You drop them from high up on a white surface, let's say on paper, bump, drop them, and see if anything falls out. If you do that enough time and nothing falls out, you see that is clean. Some rely on that. Some say, I think the OU at the time, years ago, like maybe 20 years ago, they wrote a pamphlet of how to check things. I think that they wrote such a thing. Others say no. It's something that's muhzak b'toloim. You have to know how to clean it 100%. The creative plate, he says that there's a chiyuv only mid'Rabbanan. Mid'oraita, it's batel, you don't have to worry. Mid'oraita, if something like that is batel, you don't see it, it's nullified, it's batel, don't worry about it. Only Chachamim said that such a thing you'll have to take out. So, nafka mina for us, regardless whether it's Oraita or the Rabbanan, you have something that you don't find right now, but you could do all the tricks necessary in order to find it. How do you find, for instance, in a raspberry? You put it in water, let's see what floats. But again, it's so soft that it can get destroyed. The question is, do you have to destroy something? That's a Taz. A Taz says that he speaks about raisins. Machloket Taz and Nekudot HaKesef. Taz says raisins were permitted. And this is what Rabelski Zatzal allowed the raisins for the OU, because raisins are infested. But the Taz brings down over here in Pei Dalet, this is Sfek Sfeka. Safek, it has bugs. Safek, it doesn't have bugs. And on the Tzad, that it doesn't have bugs. That it does have bugs. Maybe it wasn't Poresh, as a din that we learn in Perot, that after, they got infested after they got off the tree. So it's Eno Shoretz al Haaretz, it's Shoretz after the pri was already taken out from the tree. So you have a Sfek Sfeka. The Nekudot HaKesef argues on such a thing. So whenever you have, so Belsky says, even if you want to be Machmir, you can't be Machmir, because how are you going to check it? You want to be Machmir and check raisins. How do you check raisins? You soak them in water. Soak them in water, you can't eat them anymore. The raisins have to be eaten dry, soak them in water. That's not you can't, right? And we have such dinim that bitulim that you have, and you have to try to do whatever you can in order to be machshir. It's only when those things are still edible afterwards. If it's not edible, you're destroying them, you're not going to have that din. So this is the summary of that halacha, chazak uvaruch.
Strawberries are mixed up or not?
What?
Strawberries.
Absolutely, yeah.